Om Hari Om, Om Hari Om, Om Hari Om, Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahano Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvina Aditamastu, Mavidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om, may the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Well, welcome to our Saturday noon class on the book How to Know God by Swami Prabhavananda and Christopher Isherwood. It is a translation and interpretation and commentary on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. Our reader is Jeff Sulich, and he'll take it from here. Jeff, thank you for being the reader.
It's my pleasure, brother. We are beginning the last chapter in the book, chapter 4, which is entitled Liberation, and it should be on or about page 217. So, Sutra number 1. The psychic powers may be obtained either by birth, or by means of drugs, or by the power of words, or by the practice of austerities, or by concentration. I'm repeating Sutra number 1. The psychic powers may be obtained either by birth, or by means of drugs, or by the power of words, or by the practice of austerities, or by concentration. Some are born with psychic powers as the result of their struggles in previous lives, and not psychic powers merely, but real spiritual genius. Such are those most mysterious of all human beings, the natural saints, who are filled with the knowledge and love of God even in early childhood, and grow up seemingly untouched by the temptations of worldliness. In the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asks, suppose a man has faith but does not struggle hard enough. His mind wanders away from the practice of yoga and he fails to reach perfection. What will become of him then? And Sri Krishna answers, even if a man falls away from the practice of yoga, he will still win the heaven of the doers of good deeds and dwell there many long years. After that, he will be reborn into the home of pure and prosperous parents. He will then regain that spiritual discernment which he acquired in his former body, and so he will strive harder than ever for perfection. Because of his practices in the previous life, he will be driven on toward union with Brahman, even in spite of himself.
Okay, hold on just a moment there, Jeff. This is one of Krishna's great promises. And I've said this before, but it bears repeating. I think what he is saying is true of everyone who's with us this morning. That we have all been close to the goal, didn't achieve it, came back, were born in an auspicious circumstance, even though sometimes it doesn't seem so very auspicious in the beginning. As we look at it more carefully over time, we see that it did, in fact, and it comes through our spiritual practices, through our internal discernment. We see that it is indeed a truth. And that, so this is mentioned in many places by many different sages. Nothing that we know everything. It's only covered by distractions. And so as we practice internal discernment, it arises. It comes through recollection. We recollect the truth of who we are. So any comments or questions from anyone else about any of that?
I think it's easy to fall away from our spiritual practices, our yoga, because there's so many distractions, especially in our current society with social media trying to grab our attention and such. So it's quite possible we fell away in a previous birth.
Oh, quite possible. And we were born into a very difficult and distracting time, as you point out. But as the words of Krishna say, we are somehow driven on to regain our foothold and our sense of ourselves as spiritual beings, not as body, mind, intellect. We're not the Stardust Spaceman. Thank you, Ramadas. Anything else from anyone?
Hi, Shankar. It's Tom. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you fine, Tom. Thanks for chiming in.
Good to see you again.
Good
So,
to see you.
what do you, and you're doing this from the assisted living place, is that correct?
I am, that's correct.
So what do you think they mean when they talk about psychic powers?
Well, psychic powers are there are the 8 occult psychic powers, which is clairaudience, clairvoyance, the ability to control things at a distance, the ability to change things from one form to another. It just depends on how powerful the yogi is. It can also mean, as is alluded to here, in the discernment, the psychic power of having clarity about what is true.
I've lost you. I mean, I can see you, but your image is frozen and I can't hear you. Is that just me, or do other people have the same problem?
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. So yes, definitely they have the same problem. It's all
No,
of our.
I'm seeing you now. No problem. I see and hear you now.
Yeah, me too. Now you're frozen again.
We say it again. So we are, as spiritual aspirants, we cultivate the psychic power of discernment between the unreal and the real, and cleave to the real and renounce or let go of the unreal. It's a difficult and slow process. That's why we didn't succeed in our last lifetimes, because it is difficult and slow. Anything else from anyone? Thank you, Tom. Okay, read on, Jeff.
So when we stopped, that was concluding the quote from Sri Krishna, and now this is the Swami speaking. Certain drugs may produce visions, but these are invariably psychic, not spiritual, as is commonly believed. Furthermore, They may cause prolonged spiritual dryness and disbelief, and may even do permanent damage to the brain. The repetition of sacred words or mantrams is, as we have been told, an invaluable aid to spiritual progress. There are also special mantrams which produce psychic powers. The practice of austerities enormously strengthens the aspirant's willpower. Hence also the psychic powers may be obtained. But concentration is the surest of all the means of obtaining psychic powers. This has been thoroughly discussed in the previous chapter. And that concludes the commentary on the first sutra.
Okay.
Sutras 2.
I'm sorry, was there something from someone else?
I was just going to say that the next two sutras are grouped together. Shall I proceed with those?
Yeah, please.
I'll say something about the drugs.
Yes.
So, as I've said here before, when I was younger, like in my 20s, actually late teens and 20s, I did LSD a number of times, had a type of psychic, or not psychic experience, a type of psychedelic drug-induced spiritual experience, which I'm grateful for. It got me interested in this stuff. It eventually got me interested in Buddhism and Eastern thought. And I thought about that for years and years. You know, for a long time, I was embarrassed to talk about it because there was a very much of an anti-drug feeling in the United States. And yeah, I didn't want drugs associated with my spiritual life. But then later, I read an article in the Sun. It was called Psychedelics Out of the Closet. And it talked about how most of the Buddhist baby boomer Buddhist spiritual teachers had initially gotten interested in it through the use of psychedelics. And then I stopped feeling embarrassed about it and started talking about it. But the last time I did anything like that, I was in my mid-20s. And but so I just kept thinking about it and was curious about it. And about a year ago, I did some psilocybin, a good dose of psilocybin, which is a psychedelic mushroom. And I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun, but it's not important to my spiritual life anymore. It's the thing that was so impressive when I was 18 years old and had never meditated was not so impressive when I was 70 something and had been in meditation for years. That there's a lot of fireworks that come with psychedelics, colors and intense feelings, and that's all fun. But the actual spiritual experience was not as significant as just what happens with meditation. So those are my thoughts on
Yes.
Actually,
Well, that's why Ram Dass's guru, Neem Karoli Baba, when Ram Dass gave him some LSD, Neem Karoli Baba experienced it, and after about 6 hours, he opened his eyes, looked at Ram Dass, and said, "That's interesting, but that's not it." And so it's exactly as Tom described. It's
I think the third story in the Chandi sheds some light on this. And, I did psychedelics for decades, and there's a certain point beyond where some people just can't get past, and it's up to the grace of God, is my understanding, as to whether you have the full experience or not. But
you're absolutely right.
Myself, I've stopped all that and solely committed to this path because I don't want to keep that reservation.
Very good. Well, this is when you said the grace of God. Definitely, that's what the Chandi speaks of. That this is all the mother's will, but it doesn't seem so to us. And that's perfectly fine. When we realize that, we'll realize that through this process of recollection of who we truly are, which is that divine being that is spoken of in the opening prayer, the divine being that looks over us lovingly as a mother and father, supports and nourishes us as a mother and father. That is the divine being. And ultimately, that's the divine being that we are too. But until we know that, we don't know that. So we go ahead with our spiritual practices, enjoying them, as Tom pointed out, more and more as time goes on. And as you alluded to also, Bhagavan does, you commit yourself. That commitment is a tremendous power, tremendous power. And it keeps us focused. It keeps us doing our work from day to day, because unless we do it from day to day, it's not likely to have as deep an effect. Thanks to all of you. Anything else from anyone before we go on?
Since we're on the drug thing, and since this has been such a big part of my life, I'll comment. So I had a bad drug and alcohol problem. I got into AA. I've been clean and sober for 35 years. And for most of that period of time, I didn't do, AA is Alcoholics Anonymous, but I didn't do any drugs either. But when I did the, I psilocybin, I smoked some marijuana several times, and I enjoyed it. And I think I would continue to smoke marijuana occasionally, except I decided AA is like the single most important thing I do spiritually, because it actually saves people's lives.
Yes.
As we've seen recently, I won't name any names, but one guy's son died from fentanyl, and it's just awful. It's awful what it does and the way it destroys people and kills people and tears apart families. So more than any kind of meditation or any other spiritual practice, being a good member of AA is the single most important spiritual practice I'm involved with, because it's saving other people's lives. And so for that reason, I decided not to smoke marijuana anymore, just because it would keep me from being my best self in AA. Because I would advise other people not to smoke marijuana, so I'd be pretty hypocritical if I was smoking it myself. But other than that, I do think it's relatively harmless, and I enjoyed it. That's it. Now
Well, thank you, Tom,
okay.
for all of that. Anything else before we read on?
Yes, brother, I would just like to add something, and that is, I think the story about Neem Karoli Baba points out that the drug experience can give you glimpses of the spiritual world and the kinds of things that we are striving for on this path. But it can't take you all the way there. And anyone who continues to take drugs while professing to be on a spiritual path, I think are taking the wrong road, because as long as you're counting on the drugs to get you there, you can never have the assurance that any progress that you're making spiritually is real and lasting. You're depending on
Yes, you're absolutely right, and this is why the Swami made the remarks that he made, that it can produce contrary effects, even very serious ones, if one persists in the taking of drugs. And I think we all know people for whom this is true, or have known people for whom this is true over the course of our lives. Certainly I have.
And that was my experience, that I only had the powerful glimpse is a good word. I had a powerful glimpse of an awakening experience, a white light, no self experience. It was very powerful and wonderful. That only happened really just a few times in the beginning. And then I kept taking psychedelics, wanting to make that happen again, but it didn't happen, and
Right.
that seems to be pretty common. So yeah, that's my experience.
In
Well,
my
I think
case-
everyone on this call has had this experience from what I can tell, and we've all concluded that, no, that isn't where it's at.
I think it could be where it's at for some people. I would not go as far, Jeff, to say as it's the wrong road for you and probably all of us or most of us. But it seems to me that using drugs to get a spiritual experience is kind of funny, because drugs are something that your body consumes to change things that are going on in your body. So drugs are for the body. They're not for the spirit, the soul, the Atman. They're not for that. They're for the body. When you talk about even having a glimpse, when you say, white light experience, white, those are things that are important to the body, not to the spirit.
Yep.
It's just a thought.
Well, the bottom line is it's all still mind, and everything is the mind.
Well, the mind is the body. I mean, the mind is, it's part of the mind-body complex. It's part of that realm of existence.
In my case, the mother clearly said, okay, I'm kicking you out of the nest. Now you got to learn to get here on your own. And so that's the path I've been on.
Now, on the other hand, in relationship to drugs, I've had problems with anxiety all my life, and I was disappointed that meditation has not solved all my problems with anxiety. But so talking to my doctor recently, I tried an antidepressant. Antidepressant isn't really the right word. It's selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, but I tried one of those. And it really, really helped with my anxiety. And I thought, I want to be on this thing the rest of my life. But then, unfortunately, I had a weird allergic reaction to it, so I had to go off of it. But I know a number of people who are, daily meditators, who are on psychiatric drugs of one type or another, antidepressants, anti-anxiety, and so on.
That's a whole other category.
Yeah.
But yes, and I'm sorry you had an allergic reaction, Tom, and you're having, maybe the doctor can prescribe one that won't have.
Yeah.
To which.
I'm going to try another one and see.
Good.
I'd like to speak up since I have personal experience in this area. I have been taking an SSRI for about maybe 8 or 10 months now. I'd have to look and see. I was having problems with side effects that were listed as being probable with this medication. My doctor advised me to start adjusting the dose, so I have adjusted the dose down to where I'm taking 1/8 of the dose. The lowest dosage they make is 25 milligrams, and I snap those tablets in half, and I take one half a tablet every 4 days. That's how much I'm microdosing, but that has been the sweet spot for me. It's doing what it needs to do without rocking my system. So think about that also, Tom.
Thanks.
But I was fascinated and still am by the vulnerabilities of like Sri Ramakrishna, Vivekananda being in a human incarnation. They still suffered all these things, and for some reason we think, well, they're such a high being, they wouldn't be susceptible to these things, but in their human incarnations they are. And so, I just got over the fact of thinking that was ever going to happen to me, that I was going to be immune to these things.
Well said. And yes, that's true of Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, Vivekananda, and the others. They were subject to all the limitations of the human form. Okay.
Speaking of which, I heard that when the dentist came to visit Holy Mother, she got scared and hid under the bed. Is that true? Because I guess
Say it
back
again.
then dental care was, it was kind of painful to see the dentist.
Well, she didn't like the dental care, no. She didn't like a lot of the medical treatment she received toward the end of her life. But I don't know that she hid under the bed. I haven't heard that. I'm not saying it isn't true.
I think that's a great story, because I think one of my very biggest problems with this has been the idea that meditation and spiritual life was going to solve all of my mental problems. And now I don't think that's the case. You know, I do have regular awakening experiences, which I'm very grateful for, and it's changed my view of life and reality. It's a wonderful gift, but I'm still pretty crazy in a lot of ways. And I think that's a more realistic view of what it does. It's wonderful to have spiritual experiences, but that doesn't mean you might not still have other psychological problems that don't clear up just because of meditation.
Right. Well, life's problems keep coming. We found that out. However, meditation and yoga does put you in a frame of mind where you can put it in a better perspective and deal with it better. That's what I'm finding.
Actually, Swami Sarvadevananda gave a really good talk recently called Come Mother Come. And, he talks about it's all the mother, and we embrace it all, good and bad, as the mother, and become indifferent to it.
Yes, well, I had a conversation with Swami Sarvadevananda about 3 days ago, and we were talking about this very thing, that the mother's intentions and her actions are absolutely impenetrable to our intellect. There's no way we can understand with the limited finite mind the intentions and actions of the infinite. And so the Swami, what he said to me was, all we can do is pray. All we can do is pray and ask for the mother's guidance and her upliftment. So that's what I heard from Swami Sarvadevananda just 3 days ago. What time is it, someone?
12:28.
Okay, I think plenty of time to read on.
All right, the next two sutras are grouped together. Number 2, the transformation of one species into another is caused by the inflowing of nature. And again, the transformation of one species into another is caused by the inflowing of nature. And number 3, good or bad deeds are not the direct causes of the transformation. They only act as breakers of the obstacles to natural evolution. Just as a farmer breaks down the obstacles in a water course, so that water flows through by its own nature. Repeating Sutra number 3, good or bad deeds are not the direct causes of the transformation. They only act as breakers of the obstacles to natural evolution, just as a farmer breaks down the obstacles in a water course so that water flows through by its own nature. Here, Patanjali explains the Hindu theory of evolution of species by means of an illustration from agriculture. The farmer who irrigates one of his fields from a reservoir does not have to fetch the water. The water is there already. All the farmer has to do is open a sluice gate or break down a dam, and the water flows into the field by the natural force of gravity. The water is the force of evolution which, according to Patanjali, each one of us carries within him, only waiting to be released from the reservoir. By our acts, we open the sluice gate. The water runs down into the field. The field bears its crop and is thereby transformed. In other words, the form of the next rebirth is determined. All progress and power are already in every man, says Vivekananda. Perfection is in every man's nature, only it is barred in and prevented from taking its proper course. If anyone can take the bar off, in rushes nature. And that concludes the quote. To pursue the image of the reservoir, the performance of bad deeds and the consequent accumulation of bad karma is like breaking the dam at the wrong place and thereby causing a disastrous flood which will ruin and disfigure the field. If this happens, the water is not to blame. It is in its nature to cause change of one kind or another. It has to be properly directed, and for that the farmer is entirely responsible. It will be seen that there is a radical difference between the ancient Hindu and the modern Western theories of evolution. As Vivekananda puts it, the two causes of the evolution advanced by the moderns, that is to say, sexual selection and survival of the fittest, are inadequate. Suppose human knowledge to have advanced We'll start that sentence again. Suppose human knowledge to have advanced so much as to eliminate competition, both from the function of acquiring physical sustenance and the acquiring of a mate. Then, according to the moderns, human progress will stop and the race will die. But Patanjali declares that the true secret of evolution is the manifestation of the perfection which is already in every being. That this perfection has been barred and the infinite tide behind is struggling to express itself. Even when all competition has ceased, this perfect nature behind will make us go forward until every one of us become perfect. Therefore, there is no reason to believe that competition is necessary to progress. In the animal, the man was suppressed, but as soon as the door was opened, out rushed man. So in man there is the potential God kept in by the locks and bars of ignorance. When knowledge breaks these bars, the God becomes manifest. And that concludes the quote from Swami Vivekananda and also the commentary.
Okay, anything from anyone about all that? All right, Jeff, please read on.
The next two sutras are also grouped together, 4 and 5. So Sutra 4, the ego sense alone can create minds. And repeating that, the ego sense alone can create minds. And Sutra 5, though the activities of the different created minds are various, the one original mind controls them all. And repeating Sutra 5, though the activities of the different created minds are various, the one original mind controls them all. These two aphorisms refer to the psychic power of creating for oneself a number of subsidiary minds and bodies over which the original mind maintains control. Since it is the ego sense which creates an individual mind, it is theoretically evident that this ego sense should be able to create subsidiary minds revolving like satellites around the original. The idea is that the yogi might wish to have several minds and bodies in order to exhaust all of his karma more quickly, but the wisdom of this plan would seem to be doubtful. There is a story of a king who made himself many bodies, hoping in this way to exhaust his craving for sexual enjoyment. But finally he abandoned the attempt, declaring, "Lust is never satisfied by gratification. It only flares up more and more, like a fire fed with butter." Patanjali seems to admit this in the next aphorism. And that concludes that commentary.
Again, anything at all from anyone? All that was pretty self-explanatory. It's a mistake to use the psychic powers that we achieve through meditation to try to achieve anything. We're not wise enough to know what and how to do with the psychic power. So this is why Swami Prabhupada said to us, his disciples, don't have anything to do with them. Just leave them be. So, anything else from anyone? Okay, please read on.
Sutra 6. Of the various types of mind, only that which is purified by samadhi is freed from all latent impressions of karma and from all cravings. Repeating that, of the various types of mind, only that which is purified by samadhi is freed from all latent impressions of karma and from all cravings. In other words, karma can only be exhausted by spiritual realization, never by mere satiety of experience. And that concludes that very brief commentary.
Read the commentary again, please.
In other words, karma can only be exhausted by spiritual realization, never by mere satiety of experience.
Yes. And samadhi comes to us all if we persist in our spiritual practices. It's not likely to come to us if we're not very regular in our practice. But if we are regular in our practice, the promise from the scriptures, from Sri Krishna, and from Sri Chaitanya, and from Sri Ramakrishna is that grace will descend on you. As Bhagavan Das said earlier, it is, as Swami Sarvadevananda said, it is the mother's will and grace alone that moves us forward. But we must make ourselves available to that grace. It won't happen, or I shouldn't say it won't happen, but it's much less likely to happen if we're not regular in spiritual practice. Anything else from anyone?
We're just trying to improve the odds, right?
Exactly. In precisely. And we can't know, we cannot know what and when, what will happen or when. We can only, as Swami Sarvadevananda says, we can only pray. In our spiritual practices, however we are involved in them, our daily spiritual practices are different forms of prayer. All right, we're making good progress. Anything else from anyone? All right, dear, please read on.
Sutra 7. The karma of the yogi is neither white nor black. The karma of others is of three kinds, white, black, or mixed. Repeating Sutra 7. The karma of the yogi is neither white nor black. The karma of others is of three kinds, white, black, or mixed. The karma of ordinary people is either black, which denotes bad, white, which means good, or mixed. But when a man has attained samadhi, his acts will cease to produce karma for him of any kind. Nevertheless, since the illumined yogi continues to act, karmas are being produced, and there may even be some admixture of evil in them. Who gets these karmas? Shankara gives an interesting answer to this question. He says that those who love the illumined yogi will receive the good effects of his karmas, while those who hate him will receive the bad. Such is not the case, however, with an avatar or divine incarnation. An avatar such as Krishna, Christ, or Ramakrishna is an actual incarnation of the Godhead. He enters the phenomenal world by an act of grace and divine free will, not because he is forced to do so by the karmas of previous births. He comes into the world without karmas, and his acts in this world produce none. Therefore, the effects of his karmas cannot be received by others, either for good or for ill. In Hindu religious literature, there are numerous stories of men who hated God or an avatar. Kamsa tried to have the infant Krishna murdered, just as Herod tried to murder the baby Jesus. Shishupal fought with Krishna. Ravana fought with Rama. And in all these instances, these men attained liberation. This may sound strange to a Christian, but the point made here is the spiritual value of intense feeling. It is best to love an avatar, but it is better to hate him passionately than to be indifferent to him. Indifference, as always, is the worst sin. Rajas is spiritually higher than tamas. By way of rajas, we may reach sattva. By way of hatred, we may find love. The ancient Hindus would therefore have disagreed with Dante when he put Judas Iscariot in the lowest circle of hell. That concludes that commentary.
I'm going to ask you to read the commentary again. It's a real mouthful. There's a lot there.
It covers
So
a lot of
please
territory, yes.
read the sutra first and then the commentary.
Okay, certainly. Sutra number 7. The karma of the yogi is neither white nor black. The karma of others is of three kinds, white, black, or mixed. The karma of ordinary people is either black, which is bad, white, which is good, or mixed. But when a man has attained samadhi, his acts will cease to produce karmas for him of any kind. Nevertheless, since the illumined yogi continues to act, karmas are being produced, and there may even be some admixture of evil in them. Who gets these karmas? Shankara gives an interesting answer to this question. He says that those who love the illumined yogi will receive the good effects of his karmas, while those who hate him will receive the bad. Such is not the case, however, with an avatar or divine incarnation. An avatar such as Krishna, Christ, or Ramakrishna is an actual incarnation of the Godhead. He enters the phenomenal world by an act of grace and divine free will, not because he is forced to do so by the karmas of previous births.
Okay, hold on just a moment there, Jim. This is why it says in the hymn that Vivekananda wrote to Sri Ramakrishna, breaker of this world's chain, how great was thy sacrifice, freely choosing thy birth in this prison, our iron age, to unchain us and set us free. It is his karmas, the karmas that he is creating by this sacrifice and the life that he lived of total renunciation, the karmas of that total renunciation reverberate, and to those who are followers, they are what frees us. He doesn't have to do it by a deliberate act of will. It simply happens because he is who he is and does what he does. And so the rest of it goes. Perfect, whom lust could not taint, nor passion nor gold draw near. There's the renunciation. Perfect, whom lust could not taint, nor passion nor gold draw near. O Master of all who renounce, fill our hearts full of love for thee. Thou hast finished with fear and with doubt, standing firm in the vision of God, refuge to all who have cast fame, fortune, and friends away. Without question thou shelterest us, and the world's great sea in its wrath seems shrunk to the puddle that fills a hoofprint in the clay. So this is what happens to those of us who are followers of an avatar. It doesn't have to be Sri Ramakrishna. As the Swami pointed out in his commentary, there are a number of avatars. So if you follow Jesus, for example, Jesus said, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all else shall be added unto you, all wisdom and all knowledge. Nothing that was hidden will not be revealed." So this is Jesus's way of saying that exact same thing. And again, Jesus didn't have to will this for you. It simply comes as a result of him being that king that sits at the center of the kingdom of God. That king is the Son of the Father, that nameless, formless being that is the generative force of universe. We can call it Father or Mother. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter how we think of it, as long as we think of it consistently. So that's what's meant by what the Swami has said. Anything else from anyone about any of that?
In the where he's talking about the receiving of the different karmas, in my own life I can see this happening. And in Alcoholics Anonymous, they say it's a disease of perception. And early on in my life, I viewed my own childhood as dreadful and very inauspicious, and the cause of many terrible things afterwards. But now I see it as very auspicious, as the catalyst that was needed to put me where I am now, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. And that's why people come into the program, they're not happy campers, and and if they go on to work the program, they become a grateful alcoholic, and they're grateful for what it took to put them there to become the people that they are now.
How very well said, Bhagavan Das. And that's what I was alluding to earlier when I said, in talking about that, our births, it may not seem auspicious in the beginning, but if we stay focused on a spiritual path, we'll see, just as you so articulately said, why it was indeed auspicious and brought us to where we began to pursue our spiritual path again with vigor and with determination, because we have a sense Oh, yes, this is why I came back. Anything else? Thank you, Bhagavan Das. All right, please read on, Jeff. And
All right,
there's from
I'm going to back up one sentence just to complete the train of thought. He, meaning the avatar, enters the phenomenal world by an act of grace and divine free will, not because he is forced to do so by the karmas of previous births. He comes into the world without karmas, and his acts in this world produce none. Therefore, the effects of his karmas cannot be received by others, either for good or for ill. In the Hindu religious literature, there are numerous stories of men who hated God or an avatar. Kamsa tried to have the infant Krishna murdered, just as Herod tried to murder the baby Jesus. Shishupal fought with Krishna, Ravana fought with Rama, and in all these instances, these men attained liberation. This may sound strange to a Christian, but the point made here is the spiritual value of intense feeling. It is best to love an avatar, but it is better to hate him passionately than to be indifferent to him. Indifference as always is the worst sin. Rajas is spiritually higher than tamas. By way of rajas, we may reach sattva. By way of hatred, we may find love. The ancient Hindus would therefore have disagreed with Dante when he put Judas Iscariot in the lowest circle of hell. So now we move on to Sutra number 8. Of the tendencies produced by these three kinds of karma, only those are manifested for which the conditions are favorable. Repeating Sutra 8. Of the tendencies produced by these three kinds of karma, only those manifested for... I'll repeat it again. Of the tendencies produced by these three kinds of karma, only those are manifested for which the conditions are favorable. In any particular incarnation, a man's condition is determined by the balance of his karmas. Suppose that balance is very favorable and he is born to become a monk and spiritual teacher. He will still have some bad karmas which, under less favorable conditions, would produce bad tendencies. But because he has to live up to his vocation and set a good example to his pupils, these tendencies will be kept in abeyance, and only his good tendencies will be manifested. So this aphorism stresses the great importance of right environment and association with those who are spiritually minded. If you are born as a dog, you may still have good tendencies, but they will be greatly restricted by your dog condition. You have to act in accordance with your animal nature. And that concludes the commentary.
any comments or questions about what the Swami said. Now we see why there are such beings as Swami Sarvadevananda, Swami Ishtananda. Ima came on earlier and said she was going to go listen to a talk by Swami Ishtananda, Swami Yogatmananda, all these great manifestations of the eternal teacher. They have come because of their prior karmas. They become these wonderful monastics. And of course, I could name some nuns as well. Pravrajika Brahmaprana, who heads the Dallas Center, Pravrajika Akanda Prana, the Tempe Phoenix Center, and Pravrajika Gita Prana, who has responsibility for the Vivekananda Retreat Ridgely in mid-state New York. All these are, again, these beings who have evolved to the point where they come and become these faces of the eternal teacher. The eternal teacher is that one that is spoken of variously, mother, father, whatever it is, incarnation. So this is how this happens. And so they do indeed manifest these wonderful tendencies and inspire us, and so are able to lead us forward. Certainly Swami Prabhavananda, my teacher, my guru, and Swami Swahananda embodied these characteristics. Purity, sanctity. They weren't perfect. Of course they weren't perfect. Did they make mistakes? It's in the nature of human beings in incarnated form to make mistakes. And they weren't at all embarrassed about that. But take it in its entirety, they are able to lead. And I still have, along with pictures of Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother and Vivekananda, I have a dear, dear picture of Swami Prabhavananda, my teacher, because he inspires me. He pulls me forward. Anything else from anyone?
Actually, I thought of an example of inauspicious being auspicious, and that is Rabia, who, if I'm pronouncing her name right, she was, sold into sex slavery as a child, and, and was bought by one of the patrons in her 50s and released and became, one of the greatest female saints. And her poetry is mind blowing.
Yes, Bhagavan Das is talking about Rabia, the Sufi saint who lived, I forget what her dates are, but a long time ago. And she did indeed become a fully realized soul. And her poetry is quoted, interpreted by Daniel Ladinsky in that wonderful book, Love Poems from God. So any of you who haven't read that book, it's just a joy to read through that book of these 12 saints that he gathered together and hear their symphony, an absolute symphony. You take it all together, an absolute symphony of joy and spiritual achievement, spiritual attainment, liberation from the limitations of human life. Each one of them with their own remarkable stories. So Love Poems from God, Daniel Ladinsky, encouraged on each of you to read those poems. Anything else? Thank you, Bhagavan Das. Okay, please read on, dear. Well, how are we doing for time?
I was just going to mention it's about 2 minutes till, and
Let's call it quits there.
Yes, and I think we're at a good stopping point.
Yes, we are.
And I was just eyeballing the pages that are left, and based on an imprecise estimation of how quickly we cover the material, I would estimate that maybe it'll take us 2 more meetings to finish the book. You might do it.
Okay.
Might do it in one, but it's more likely to take 2 meetings more to do it.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right. And so, as I said earlier, the book we'll take up next is Divine Grace. So, if you can and are inclined to do so, get a copy of the book, and someone of you will be our reader for that book when we take it up. And who knows, as Jeff just said, probably 3 meetings from now. Thank you, Jeff, for reading today and for very capably commenting yourself. And for all of you who commented, thank you. For those of you who didn't, know that you are one with us. Behind the seeming manyness is the oneness. And so that current runs through us all, and you don't have to say anything for us to feel your response. Whether we cognize it intellectually in our waking awareness, it nevertheless is there and it has an effect on us. So thank you. Thank you, each one, for your participation. May we all be well and in bright spirits. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Durga, Durga, Durga. May we be safe. May we be cheerful. May we be healthy. May we have peace of mind. And may we go forward knowing that we do so in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being as our Mother and Father. So until tomorrow morning, for those of you who choose to join us, where the topic will be spiritual self-care tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. And I have an announcement to make. When I move back to the center, which is within the foreseeable future, as I said earlier, I need a man to live with me there. The deal is free room and board, a private room with your own bath, your own full bath, kitchen privileges, and it would be an ideal situation for a university student, but it doesn't need to be a university student, of course. And it would be an excellent situation and should be, or most appropriately, the housemate would be an initiated disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, simply because there would be so much more in common. So you'll find all of this in an upcoming newsletter or bulletin, which you will receive if you get this. So if you know of anyone who might want to live that life with me at the center, please do have them get in touch with me. They can call me on my cell phone, which is 818-913-0345. Just for your convenience, if you're writing that down, 818-913-0345. And you'll do me a favor if you will refer anyone who might fit that description of a good housemate when I return to the center. Thank you so much. Anything else from anyone before we close?
Brother, you mentioned current, and I'm very happy that I'm back on the class. We are back in the class because I was missing this current.
Good, Rajiv. It's good to hear from you. And I agree with you. I was very much missing it myself. So glad we're back together. It is very hard.
I am too, Brother Shankar. I want to thank you for your continuing service to us and to everyone who looks upon you as a valued guide. And also, I'd just like to say how great it is to be with everyone once again, even though it's electronic.
Yes. Well, Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. You know, we are what we are because, as the Swami said, of our previous karmas. And so I'm very grateful for the role that I play in your lives. Very, very grateful. And so any of you who wish to contact me at any time, I just gave you my phone number. Feel free to call at any time. I love to talk with you. I love to spend time with you. Please don't feel like it's in any way an imposition or some problem. No, just exactly the opposite. So if you care to call and talk about your spiritual life or about anything else that is of concern or interest to you, it would be my delight to talk with you. So with that, we'll sign off.
Brother, I have an announcement to make, personal one.
Yes, Rajiv.
I'm very happy to say I've me and my wife have bought a home in Beaufort, and I pray that it's Durga's home.
Well, I'm sure it will be because of who you are. Just ask that. Just pray for that. And it will be indeed. It already is, simply because of your already expressed prayer and intention. Of course it will be Durga's home. Thank you, Rajiv. Thanks for letting us know. We wish you all the best in your new home. Anything else? All right. Well, we'll sign it up. We'll sign off from here. So, a great good afternoon to all of you. Jai Shri Ramakrishna. Jai Ma.